Hello everyone, Santier here with more Let's Make a Game Astral Collision, and let's go over some of the stuff that I've been doing. So one of the things I have done is just a small little thing here. I added controls to make the audio, the background audio stuff for the world map change when the day-night cycle advances. Specifically, this is to allow it so that way I can do things like this, where when it's nighttime, it will play night sounds and turn off the background music, or vice versa. There's going to be some places where this will do some things, like the ocean, for example, is probably always going to have certain background music or background sound effects of ocean noise on, and then different background music and stuff like that. And then one of the bigger things that I've been doing, if I pull this up, I've been working on additional, actually I can show it over here more easily. I've been working on more of the unique skills for characters. I'll talk about that more in just a second, because there's something that I've realized as I've been doing that I need to do. But one of the big things that I've been doing is working on enemies. So I got the Shadow Serpent to an initial place. Toxic Bite. Did I go over that last time? This is just an attack that... here, let me go to it. Toxic Bite is an attack that paralyzes and poisons, does damage based on dexterity and stuff like that. So the Shadow Serpent has that, has some properties. Then there's the Dire Rat, which I've added. So I've done a little bit of playtesting against these enemies so far, and had a few conclusions. I'll go over those in just a moment. But quickly, the rat here has... it's a bit resistant to poison, has a chance to cause fear. A little bit harder to critical hit. It also gets access to Vicious Bite, which is another new skill for monsters. Vicious Bite is just an attack that deals piercing damage that has life drain. So it steals health and can heal the enemy. I figured that was an interesting way of giving them a little bit of additional resilience. And then I made the Vile Ooze. So the Vile Ooze is primarily more of a spellcaster. It can attack, and when it does, it has a pretty high chance to cause paralysis. It can heal with Healing Spring. Water Pulse is a water spell that causes confusion. Absorption is something it will use on itself to allow it to heal a bit. This basically is a state that turns or allows it to absorb damage instead of being dealt damage. It's using some of my custom plugin stuff. So that state means that up to 10% of its HP, so 80 damage or less, will get turned into healing instead of being damage while that state is on, and whenever it takes damage with that state on, there's a chance that it'll end. And then Sickening Soil, which does AoE, or it affects everyone earth damage and does some... and causes poison. Also, these guys are good at dropping goo. So there's a couple of things I specifically wanted to address with some of these enemies, and one of the big ones is I felt like with a lot of these initial enemies, fire was notably effective. That's maybe a little bit... like right here, the Devil Hen, fire is a little bit more effective against the Devil Hen, so is lightning. The Buzzkill is nothing particularly notable that way, but the Harrower right here is also notably very weak to fire, and a bit weak to lightning as well. So I felt like fire and lightning damage for spells were both a little bit strong against some of the initial enemies that I made. So I try to make some of these enemies more resistant to fire and lightning. So you can see, for example, the Dire Rat really shrugs off lightning and takes much less damage from fire. And the Vile Ooze. So the Vile Ooze specifically is like weak to lightning still, and very weak to ice, and actually somewhat weak to Omni, and weak to fire as well, I believe. Yeah, so fire's not in this list, so it just takes normal damage from fire. But this guy is really resistant to like a bunch of other damage types. The idea here was that these guys would be a little bit more challenging to take down, and notably they're resistant to the standard physical damage types, so the harder to kill with those. So I just wanted to, with some of these enemies, incentivize other damage types. To make it so that way, the solution isn't always throw fire at everything. Just because I felt like with a number of enemies, particularly the Harrower and the Devil Hen, that was proving to be a very effective strategy against those early enemies. But it's all a process of trying to figure out how to balance things and what sort of philosophy I want to take with that. And I've been thinking some about what are the relative balance of skills and things along those lines. So you can see these guys have substantially more HP and higher stats and things like that. The Vile Ooze proved to be really nasty because the confusion basically means that you'll randomly attack whatever, and that is usually not ideal, because you're usually going to be like attacking an ally and things like that. I had a troop with 3 Vile Oozes, and I reduced it to 1 Vile Ooze. That'll battle at some point here. But the triple group just absolutely wiped the floor with me. And these guys are early enough that they shouldn't quite do that. So, anyway, as I was saying, one of the things that I'm doing right now is working on the second skill for a lot of these characters. So I've gotten one for the Whammo here, for example, that heals a condition and heals an ally if a condition is removed. This is a resurrection skill. The Telenergist has a skill that basically what this does is it says, whichever one of us has more MP, we will donate it until we have equal amount of MP or you have max MP, whichever comes first. So this is to kind of balance out MP, because that's what it does, right? The idea here is the Telenergist has a lot of MP, so this is an opportunity for it to kind of serve as a battery, or if it's using a lot of its MP up with spells, it can give it to others. So, but as I've been going through this, I've been realizing, so there's a couple of things that I've been needing to try to mentally tackle. One of which is balance. How do I make spells feel that they're in a good spot? And I've got a couple of things going on right now. First of all, as you level, you get more stats. One of those are going to be damage, of course, but it's also going to be max MP. Your max MP goes up. That means that a spell that is powerful gets relatively cheaper as you level up. And so figuring out what's a good point for skills to feel like they're at a good spot in the early part of the game where they deal relatively good damage, their MP cost is high, and just how all of that stuff is going to work out. There's a couple of different factors I have for balancing. I can do things like adjust the success rate, but I don't really want to tweak that too much. But speed of activation, scope, so how many enemies it hits, things like MP costs, other additional effects that it may have, and whatnot. Like there's different knobs that I have to turn, and I've been trying to think through, okay, how do I approach some of this stuff? A lot of the earlier skills, I'm kind of erring on the side of single target or damage is low. So if it hits multiple enemies, the damage is probably lower. And if it hits, if it has higher damage, it's probably single target. And MP cost, of course, factors into that. But as I've been going through and making these secondary skills, so I have ideas for the general idea of what each of these classes is. So the Knight, for example, is a tanky character with higher target rate. And you can see it has a target rate of 200%. Target rate is basically a flag for the AI of saying, how likely are you going to attack this person? So if you have higher target rate, it's more likely that they're going to be attacked. And if they have lower target rate, it's less likely that they'll be attacked. So the Knight is basically twice as likely as any other character who has 100 target rate to be targeted. So this is kind of a property. The Knight also has high HP, because that's my defensive stat in the game, is HP. I believe the Knight also has, not defense, defense, has, in terms of its overall stats, yeah, its Earth is somewhat higher, and this is HP regen passively. It affects HP regen. So that gives a little bit more durability that way as well, and just gets more durable type equipment for armor I can equip, stuff like that. So that's a concept for the Knight. The concept for the Whammo is that it is a support character whose support skills are TP based. So Get Well, for example, is a TP based spell, healing spell, right? It costs TP to use, not MP. Most of the spells are going to be MP based, But the Whammo is support for doing that, and the Berserker is offensive TP-based spells. So they're slightly different, or they're two different angles on that sort of take, but the idea is they are spellcasters who use TP instead of MP to do their spellcasting. That's kind of the place that they're in, and one's support, defensive focus, and the other is offensively focused. And then there's the Telenergist, which is a character that cares about MP, and so it does stuff with MP. The Prismage is just a mage focused on fire, water with the combined element of light, and we have one of those for each of the combined sets. So the Prismage is light, then lightning for the sorcerer, metal for the war mage, ice for the blizzagus, darkness for the warlock, life for the druid. So that's pretty straightforward in terms of the base concept, but especially as I've been going through these guys, and I'll go through the rest of the concepts, but the mage block here of Prismage to druid, a little bit the Telenergist, but Prismage through druid especially, the general profile of what they are is almost a little too general to really know specifically their mechanical identity. And that's one of the things I've been running into. So Special Forces was the idea that this would be a physical attacker that specialized in critical hits. And then I didn't give him Keen Eye for some reason. I might rearrange that somewhere because it would almost make more sense for him to have Keen Eye, but perhaps I'll give him some... This is another thing that I'm running into, actually. It's a little bit of a tangent, but it's a relevant tangent. So there's only so many icons that RPG Maker comes with natively, and I want every effect to have, every state to have a unique icon, because I want them to be differentiatable and identifiable. And one of the things that I'm running into is I am tight on icons. So I have, what is this, the top row, I think? Yeah, so like this top row of conditions, this whole block right here is all debuffs and buffs. And I had to tweak them to, so you can see strength, dex, fire, earth, wind, and water. This maybe should have been air in retrospect, but whatever. I'm not going to change it now. Are a little bit different in appearance than MHP and MMP because I had to change the text because I'm not using attack, defense, etc. So I've got this set of icons. These guys are basically identical to these with, I mean, they're inverted. They're very similar, but they look slightly different. Their backgrounds are slightly different in appearance, and their coloration is kind of inverted in terms of like these use white and these use dark. I'm not quite sure what the idea behind those was from the standpoint of the people who made RPG Maker, but I'm not using these currently because they are too similar to these. They're not differentiated enough. So I'm using these for, well, not this one. This one is the knockout icon, but I'm using these guys for the conditions. And then I've got the elements here. So these guys, and then this. This is Earth. And then I've got these random arrows. So I'm like, these are hard to make good use of for states. And then there's this guy right here, which is I'm using for the intercept. I'm using this for weapon attacks, like physical attacks that are not weapon attacks, spells that are not specifically typed. I have no idea what I would do with the lute icon or harp or whatever. This is for guard. That's the guard icon. I'm using this for dodge. This is keen eye, and then these are the commendations. But the rest of these are going to be like, these are pick upable like items, or these are crafting materials. To be clear, so like these are food, which is another branch of crafting that I'm going to be doing. So these are not appropriate, and then these are just used items. None of these are appropriate for icons unless it's specifically an effect that's been caused by it. So the potion, for example, has an icon for you are under the effects of the healing potion. And then these are equipment, so weapons and gear. Those aren't good for icons either. Like, what does that even mean? These guys, I have no idea what I'd do with them if I were to make them icons. So I'm kind of feeling a little bit pinched on states because I keep wanting to add states to get additional effects in. I'm thinking I might blend these guys with some of these guys, the elements, and potentially try to do stuff. I'm not entirely sure, but I like having the option of doing stuff with states, and I'm feeling a little bit pinched in that regard. So I bring that up because I've had various ideas of skill effects to do that want more states, and I need to figure out how to generate icons for them that doesn't require too much. Anyway, that kind of comes back to this guy. I didn't give him Keen Eye. I could give him something that's kind of like that, but I need an icon for it, which is the problem that I keep running into. So anyway, he's supposed to specialize in critical hits, which is maybe a bit dubious of a thing to specialize in, but he's good at avoiding critical hits and has a pretty good critical rate of plus 20% base. The Ranger is a physical attacker that's focused on conditions. One of the things that you'll notice is that all of the conditions have half rate on him, and there's a tiny chance to inflict poison with any attack. So, like, this one's probably one of the better defined characters. Like, okay, I understand what it means to be focused on conditions. That's pretty straightforward. I get that. Some of the other stuff is, like, what does it mean to be specialized in critical hits? Like, just doing critical hits is not necessarily a thing. So it's going to need to... I'm going to need to add something to trigger off of critical hits, I think. Or do something that way just to make this have more. The Ninja is a physical attacker focused on speed. Well, what does that even mean? Going fast? Like, it has a ridiculous attack speed of 150. And for comparison, the Ranger's attack speed is... not even here. Special Forces, you have an attack speed? Yeah, most of them have just an attack speed of 0, a default attack speed, I think. And a lot of their attack speed is going to come from their weapon. So the Ninja does have a ridiculously high attack speed and is probably going to go first a lot of the time because 150 attack speed is crazy. Also has an inbuilt 10% chance to do additional actions and stuff like that. But how do you turn that into skills? How do you turn focus on speed into skills? And that's something I'm going to need to figure out. The Berserker has an idea. The Sage I don't need to worry about. It just has all of the common skills. I don't need to worry about a skill theme for the Sage. I went through the process of figuring out all that. But basically what I'm coming to here at this point is realizing that for a number of the characters, such as the Knight to an extent, the Whammo and the Berserker to an extent, the Ninja and the Special Forces to an extent, the Telenergist, and then especially the Prismage through Druid. All of them need a tighter concept than uses these two elements with a special, like, and can then use this this combined element of the two focus elements, right? That concept is too broad and it doesn't have a mechanical definition. What does it mean to use light magic? So I'm going to need to spend some time, as I've realized as I've been going through this, just identifying what it is that each one of these guys does in a more concrete mechanical sense. What is their design space? What is it they specialize in? So that's all stuff that I'm going to need to be focusing on and addressing. But like I said, I've started the process of getting additional skills made. So let's go over some of those. Let's see. I touched briefly on some already. So Interception is a special state I added. It heals you for a bit, 10% of your HP plus 150, and then adds a state Intercepting, which just means that you are substitute. So you'll take any attacks coming for low health allies on this turn. The Whammo, I added Shake It Off. I already touched on this, but this heals a condition, or this removes a condition, and if a condition is removed, it heals. Get Up is a Resurrect. That specifically, it adds Rejuvenation and recovers MP and gives some TP and stuff, which is nice. Balance MP I touched on already, but this one shares MP between you and one of your allies based upon whoever has more shares with whoever has less. Searing Flames is an all enemies fire damage spell that removes buffs to earth, wind, and water. So the idea here, this is something that I should go touch on. If I go up here, these base elements, fire, water, earth, and wind, I determined that each one has a thing it can remove. So fire can remove buffs, water can remove conditions, earth can remove debuffs, and wind can remove auras. So these are defensive. Removing conditions and debuffs are defensive things, and these are offensive. Removing buffs and auras is a offensive thing. It removes it from the enemy. So Searing Flames is playing into some of that idea of, okay, fire can take care of some of these things. It allows you to be able to reduce if the enemy is building those up. Lightning Reflexes is just, it grants Lightning Reflexes aura, which increases the chance to counterattacks. That one's pretty straightforward, and it's going to be pretty straightforward to add the other ones as well. The Prismage will get a light one, and so on and so forth. That'll probably occur a little bit later, because the light one defends against stat downs, if I recall correctly, and so being able to do that is more of a late thing. But I also came up with this idea for a skill, Exposing Shock. So lightning is a combination of wind and fire. So this particular spell, I made it a fairly late one because it's an effect that's potent, but more potent later in the game when more of the effects occur, theoretically. So this removes all buffs and all auras from the target foe and deals damage based on the number of auras that get removed. So that's what that one does. And I think, yeah, I got to some of these other ones. So there's a Special Forces skill here, Guard Break. I think that might have been around last time, though, so I'm not going to dwell on it. So yeah, I've just been kind of working through some of that. A lot of my focus has been on getting this second tier of enemies set up and getting some playtesting in with that and some of that stuff. Another thing I did that I should have done a while back, this is zoomed out, is I've added this character right here. This just sets up it's a dev mode, right? It gets you, just quickly starts this whole thing and gives you all of the characters in your party, gives you some starting gold, some starting gear, and sends you into the world. So this is to allow me to have one party with everyone in it. That's not how the game's going to be played, but it means I don't have to worry about playtesting the game with a bunch of different parties and being like, okay, do I have this character? Like, I need to play through the game in this combination and this combination. I can just, on the fly, change the combination of characters that I have. So I added this for testing purposes. Like I said, don't know why I did not add that earlier, but here we are. Another thing that I've been thinking about some is how I want to handle game over. I know generally how I'm doing it. So if I go to common events, this is the game over handling. It just transfers player to the last rested map location, heals the party, and then fades in. Like, that's pretty straightforward. I'm not having you lose resources or anything. I figure walking back is a big enough cost. If I feel like it's not, I can always add something. But for right now, I'm happy with having this be the cost. So with that being the case, I'm thinking some about how I'm setting that location. So right now, it's when you rest at an inn. If you rest at an inn, it sets your last rested location to be the inn. That's pretty straightforward. But I'm thinking about this narratively, and I still need to advance it to morning. But I'm thinking about this narratively in the sense that what's actually happening when your characters die. Somehow they're getting resurrected with all of their gear and everything transported back to them. How are they going back to the inn and all that sort of stuff? I'm not entirely satisfied with the last rested thing. So I'm kind of mentally toying around with the idea of having structures that you interact with to set your spawn location. And then what will happen is you'll go to one of those rather than the last place you slept. So I need to kind of think through, like, okay, is this something that I want to do? If so, how am I going to set it up? I'm inclined to go in that direction. I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do, but I kind of want a monument that when you interact with it, it becomes activated. And then I do some sort of effect on an activated version. So there's a couple of inbuilt things that I could look at. I don't want to use random crystals or glowy pads. So there's just a couple of different effects here that I could potentially try to make use of. I could make use of, say, one of these sparkly shines on it or something like that, probably, for if it's active. I guess that's a lot of it. Like, I don't want to use these statues because that doesn't make any sense. But yeah, so that covers what's been going on so far and what I've done. I feel like because this recording session is earlier relative to the previous one on average, that I would have liked a little bit more, but here we are. This is what's happened. I guess I can conclude this with a little bit of a playtest. So let me turn that music off and get this rolling. It might take it a moment to load. Here we go. Now, boy howdy, the music in this game is loud. I'm just going to turn some of these things down a little bit, just to try to be a little bit more even with the other music. So this is just a random group that I've been kind of going down here and trying to fight. So you can see here's a Shadow Serpent. So these characters are level 5, I believe. So I'm often like wanting to start with like a Hone Weapon and a Commendation. MP Burn is really good. But this deals fire damage, remember, and the snake is resistant to fire damage, so it will deal less damage to that. I want to take out the Buzzkills. And here this character has Healing Spring available, Fireball, and Brilliant Flash. So here's one of the things is Fireball does not cost very much MP, and deals some reliable fire damage. So this is a really nice reliable spell. Brilliant Flash deals more damage, but obviously is going to eat up your MP a lot more quickly. So anyway, I want to take out the Buzzkills. Oh man, it crit me for a bit. Combination is a really useful skill to have access to. It just gives a little bit of MP and HP regen, mostly. Oh. Interesting. We silence? Yeah, okay. Because that has a chance to deal, like, most conditions. So this is one of the things that's interesting about the Knight, is I feel like not all of my options are great ones for some of the attacks. Like, I don't need to necessarily use Guarding Strike here. Both of these are really close to being dead, so I might look at what other options I have for taking them on. And I'm just going to start attacking... You know what, let's just attack some of those. Okay, I'm going to start going after the Shadow Serpent. Yep, take out the Buzzkills. Ha! Nice. Yep, there's the counterattack. Okay, so I'm probably going to want to... Actually, I could just Deep Breath him. No, I'm going to Guarding Strike against the Buzzkill and... Oh. Okay. Opening Strike against the Shadow Serpent. I'm going to MP Burn the Shadow Serpent and Healing Spring Sir Lionel. One of the things is Healing Spring does have quick activation, so you are likely to get it off before other things. Ouch. Ouch. That hurt. Okay. Well then. Well, it's almost dead. This doesn't matter much. I can meditate to get 16 MP. Meditate's one of those skills that I thought would be good on the Telenergist and has proven to not be as good as I thought it would be. And with the principal reason being that it turns out you just don't have very much MP on the Telenergist. Or TP on the Telenergist. Its stats for it are kind of low. So, I mean, this is the best thing you can do there. Yeah, you'll notice that all of my costs are way high. That's because Paralysis increased costs by 250%. So this went from 5 MP up to 13. I still want to use it, though, because... yeah. There we go. Do some healing, and that'll heal off the snake there. So I don't have a good way of getting rid of, and this is one of the things that I want to look at, but currently I don't have a good way of getting rid of that poison. I could get an item to specifically heal it, but it's a very potent healing item. I want to make some cheaper healing items, but I'm not quite sure, and for specifically getting rid of poison, but I'm not quite sure how I want to address that just yet. So we're just going to walk around poison for a little bit. Okay, so this is just some harrowers. These are pretty straightforward enemies at this point. Just attack them, drop some MP burn, and a fireball. And these guys are weak to fire, and I've gotten high enough level that they're not too bad. They are also, I believe, weak to slashing damage. They do have 1,000 HP, though, so they're not going to go down immediately. Yeah, and they like you sickening soil. So they can be a little bit nasty, especially early on. The idea is that you want to get your initial, like, couple of levels off of, like, some of the rats and stuff out in the fields. I'm going to use a guarding strike on this guy. Yeah, get well. It's probably a good idea. Take out that and that. Yep, fireball is really, really, really good against them. There we go. So there's just some considerations that I have with going through some of that stuff. Now at this point I need to be starting to add more outpost locations, and one of the things that I want to do next, let's go ahead and rest at the inn for $20. It's always going to be $20 to rest at the inn. I don't want that to ever vary. I'm going to grab a couple Omnicure roots and a couple of healing potions. I need to remember I have healing potions as well. I need to fix this. So this is something that I ran across. This is something that I need to fix right here. This description is completely non-helpful because it is doing the math description. But what does that even mean? So I need to figure out how I want to address this particular screen. So that's something I'm going to want to look at. I want to look at more stuff to be able to specifically deal with poison, because it hangs around after battle, which I want it to do. I also need to begin putting together this area. I'm not quite sure how I want to approach that. My thought initially was that you'd step into here, and then this whole area would become one big city. And I may do that, or I may have it where each individual location. Yeah, we walk through that, but there's no good way of addressing that. So this shouldn't block here. Or I might make each individual one of these like a separate part. I'm inclined to make this like you step in here and you enter a big city. And that's my inclination. That was kind of my intent, and I think I might stick with it. But yeah, that beginning to get some more cities planned out so that way I can get some more services and stuff like that online. Getting more of an identity mechanically identified for each character. And like, okay, what is it that they really kind of do with their unique skills? And some of that sort of stuff as well. Like, there's just going to be a process of playtesting and balancing things and all that sort of stuff as well. Let's see if I can find some other... I need to make an enemy battle area, and that's a service that I actually want to put inside the... Actually, can I just escape? Yeah. That's something that I want to put inside of the Adventurers Guild headquarters that's going to be up in that big city. Here's some dire rats. So let's go ahead and finish out today by fighting a couple of dire rats, shall we? So I definitely know that I want to start with Hone Weapon. Hone Weapon increases the damage of my weapon by 50%, so attacks will deal more damage. Now, remember, these guys are resistant to fire. The advantage of using this against them is it does make them lose a bunch of MP. So if we actually look at the dire rat, now this is information the player does not get access to. But if we actually were to go to the enemies and look at the dire rat, you'll notice it has 60 MP. So 4 uses would completely burn out that MP, which might be useful. It would prevent them from being able to use Vicious Bite very easily. They don't have any native regen, so they're basically... they get a decent amount off of luck, though. Luck is water, so they'll get like 6 MP per turn off of that. So it's a little bit difficult to kind of burn them out. So it's better to just Elemental Blast them. And again, Fireball's not going to be very good against them. If I used that, I wouldn't deal a ton of damage, so it's better to use Brilliant Flash. Which you'll notice they did take slightly less damage. Yeah, that's probably just random. A random aspect of accuracy and stuff. Affecting some of that. So at this point, I can... Okay, I'm going to use the thrust on that guy. Opening Strike is going to gain me TP, so I want to use it there. And then just use the Elemental Blast and Brilliant Flash on this rat. So one of the... Ooh, got feared. One of the other things that I'm a little bit concerned about is... Oh, yeah, Vicious Bite just joins him. I might need to make Vicious Bite a little stronger. One of the things that I'm concerned about is the balance between spells, MP regen rates, so like the cost of spells, spell regen rates, and like weapon damage and stuff like that. And one of the big things I need to figure out is how do I make it so that way just mashing attack is a fine choice. Okay, we should be able to finish off this. I can use Get Well, I don't need to, so I'm just gonna... Like, Power Attack is dealing plus 34 damage, and it's more likely to be a critical hit. How does that compare to, you know, this is 32 MP for 420 Omni damage. Omni damage is typically, like, it's representative of, like, all types of elemental damage. You know, how do I address some of these things where, like, making sure spells and skills are kind of balanced with each other. Yeah, that did a lot less damage because of its evasion. That was a pretty solid hit, though. Yep, it evaded. It used retreating attack, which gives it evasion. Dodge just gives a lot of evasion. So... Now, MP Blast is expensive enough that it starts to wear out the MP relatively effectively. But it's just figuring out how to balance all that stuff. I might need to make weapons stronger or something like that. I'll need to think about it, but the balance does feel off. Fear, I believe, gives me a bunch of degens. So... I'm going to go ahead and save those things. But if I go look at that really quickly, just as a refresher, Fear, yeah, it basically prevents you from landing critical hits and gives you MP and TP degen of 10%, so it's going to be draining those. So yeah, I'm going to need to just at some point figure out, you know, what is the balance for spells versus physical attacks, and do I need to adjust melee weapons or anything? So those are all things I'm thinking about as well. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here, and here's our lovely world again, just to end on. So until next time, everyone, take care, and goodbye.